Okay, first guest is locked in.
Thank you,
All
Alex.
you need to do is put him up on the fader. And Jack starts.
Report on WVOX 1460 and around the world at WVOX.com. This is Jack McGuirk along with Ken Kraetzer bringing you this half hour of discussion of issues related to veterans and the active military. Now,
He's locked
here's
in.
Ken.
Hey, good afternoon, Jack, and everyone listening to Sons of the American Legion Radio here on WVOX 1460 in New York. I mean, I'm just taking another look up at the monitors in the studio here about what a
Yes, I said that.
deadly day of chaos it is in Afghanistan. U.S. flag flown out of Kabul embassy. I heard last night the embassy had moved to the airport.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have a couple of veterans on our show today to talk about this. Both have served extensively in the U.S. Army. Dr. Rich Robitaille has been a contributor to SALRADIO, and another contributor and regular guest, our go-to guy on Afghanistan, Lieutenant Colonel Sam Houston,
Dr. Robitaille's ready.
Out of West Point. And he is the former commander of the Bagram Air Base garrison. That means he's in charge of everything but like the air wing. I mean, all the security, all the base facilities and so on, and he did that for a year. He's also had many other very significant jobs in the U.S. Army, and Rich Robitaille, 30 years service, first sergeant when he retired. We're going to hear from them in a moment. You know, it's got to say 2,448 American service members killed in Afghanistan over the duration, over the nearly 20 years, and also 3,846 contractors.
Right.
And some of those may be Americans who were working there, and others that were working for the U.S. military. America's longest war. It just looks like a catastrophe, Jack. I mean, from what I can see for the U.S. military. You got some stories.
You know, I'll start with a couple of COVID stories. The Pentagon is now requiring members of the U.S. military to get vaccinated against COVID. All military troops will have until September 15th to get vaccinated, according to a memo sent by the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. Now they're also looking into seeing which vaccines are going to get an FDA approval. The Pfizer vaccine is expected to be approved by the FDA in early September. Should that not happen, Austin could seek a presidential waiver to require troops to get the vaccine. So far, more than 74% of the Navy has received at least one dose of the COVID vaccine, with 65% of active duty Air Force members and 60% of Air Force reserves having had at least one shot. In the Army, that number is closer to 50%. So I'll have to keep an eye on those numbers. Unvaccinated troops currently have to follow protocols that include wearing masks, maintaining social distance, and abiding travel restrictions. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah, fortunately, most of the U.S. military tends to be younger, so they've been less afflicted by the seriousness of COVID. But you said it's the 29th service member?
Yeah, that's the next story. The operations officer an operations officer from Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington became the 29th COVID-19 casualty of the U.S. military. Army Lieutenant Colonel Scott Flanders, 56 years old, died in San Antonio, Texas, on August 2nd, where he was being treated for COVID. He previously was enlisted in the Navy and was originally from Boston and deployed twice to Afghanistan, according to Army officials. To date, 29 service members have died from COVID-19, including 12 active duty personnel. Flanders is the fourth active duty and the highest ranking soldier to die from the coronavirus. And COVID-19 cases among service members have actually gone up with the spread of the Delta variant. In the past week, the Defense Department has reported 5,167 new cases among troops. And overall, nearly 218,000 service members have contracted the virus since the outbreak began. 1,962 have been hospitalized, so another we want to keep an eye on there. And the Navy christened a new ship in Wisconsin. It's called the USS Nantucket. Lockheed Martin-led shipbuilding team launched its littoral combat ship into the Menominee River at the Fincantieri Marine Shipyard in Wisconsin. Polly Spencer, ship sponsor and wife of Richard Spencer, the 76th Secretary of the Navy, from 2017 to 19 christened the ship, the future USS Nantucket. The last Navy ship to have that name, USS Nantucket, was commissioned in 1862 to serve in the Union side during the Civil War. This ship, the LSC Freedom variant, was described as a resilient, flexible warship designed to meet the evolving missions of the Navy. Littoral combat ships are unique among combat ships that are designed to complete close-to-shore missions through its speed, strength, and versatility, and is growing and relevant part of the Navy's fleet. So brand new littoral combat.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about that. Those ships have really struggled. Some of the early editions have already been retired because of issues with the engines, and also they don't like the aluminum structure. They're too basically brittle.
Mm-hmm.
You can't take a shot. That's what it comes down to. And so the Navy's retiring them more quickly. They're trying to see, I'm sure, how many years of service they can get out of this particular ship and a few others. But the littoral combat ship program has really been a problematic effort for the Navy. That the company that's building this one's getting a new contract to build destroyers. Now, I just want to see, do we have Dr. Robitaille on the line? Yeah, why don't we have him join us?
How are you?
Good. We have Dr. Rich Robitaille calling in, American Legion member from New Jersey, contributor to Sons of the American Legion Radio, and also a first sergeant with 30-year service in the U.S. Army. And Rich, thanks for calling in. First, just give us your basic reaction to what's happening today that we see on the screens that's happening in Afghanistan.
Well, I think if anybody's been on social media, it's just the veterans, and I was talking to 4 generals I know, all the way down to enlisted guys I know, and people are just absolutely outraged. I myself didn't serve in Afghanistan. I served in Iraq, but I have many friends that did serve in Afghanistan, one of which got killed in action, saving the life of a Polish officer. And people are veterans are rightfully asking, well, why did we go? What's the point? We've been told for 20 years that this was a just cause. The very name of the mission was Operation Enduring Freedom. And a lot of Gold Star families right now are wondering why their son or daughter was killed, why they went over. All the disabled soldiers and Marines that came back who were missing limbs. We had another friend of mine who lost a leg in an IED explosion in Afghanistan. It's just, people, the men and women of America, are willing to make sacrifices, and of all the branches. I mean, that's what we do. We join the military to serve, and I tell you, a lot of veterans right now are wondering why we were sent there to start with. We'll take the hit if it's necessary, but people are wondering how does this class like that? And we have the most powerful military in the world.
Yeah, why do you see this withdrawal? I mean, it's something that's been planned for a long time. It has been 20 years. Why do you see it going bad so quickly?
Well, I think that everything good or bad is because of leadership. Like I keep watching the news, and they said the Afghans had a 300,000-man army, which we built, trained, and paid for with billions of dollars. But you had corrupt leadership. Look, the president left the country. What if our president just left the country? That's why. Once the leadership ran, the army just laid down its weapons. They said, what are we fighting for? I don't really even blame the Afghan army that much, because they looked up and saw their leadership leaving. Who knows the corruption behind the scenes and whether people were paid off or whatever. The Taliban army, 75,000 soldiers, and they weren't very united. So it's pretty amazing how they can take over the entire country in 1 week without something going on behind the scenes. And it's just terrible. It's just terrible. And the only good thing is that the president sent in 5,000
They don't need
troops
time
quickly.
cues.
Oh, like
just
telling
the
them,
music.
like 30 seconds.
They don't need time
I
cues.
just saw the news reports that they got all the Americans out of the U.S. Embassy safely. So that's a good thing, that we're not going to, it'd be horrible if we were in a hostage situation again, or that they started slaughtering civilians at the airport. Having those Marines and paratroopers from the 82nd at the airport is going to do a great deal to get a lot of those Americans and the loyal Afghanis out. The president already said that he's going to start, getting the Afghanis out, because they'll just be killed. The Taliban will just slaughter them all. And they know that. That's why we got to get those people out of there. He just said he's sending in another 1,000 troops. Good.
Rich, we got to go, but I appreciate your calling in. I know we're going to talk again tonight.
All right. Take care.
You've been listening to the Sons of the American Legion Radio Report on WVOX AM 1416, heard around the world on WVOX.com. We'll be right back after this brief Fox News break, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the Sons of the American Legion Radio Report on WVOX AM 1416, heard around the world on WVOX.com. We have a special guest coming up on the line, but first we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening in Afghanistan as Kabul fell without a shot and the nearly 20-year Afghanistan campaign unraveled. Now, on Sunday, the Pentagon confirmed that it was sending another battalion of 1,000 troops into Afghanistan on top of the 1,000 announced Saturday. The weekend's deployment brings the number of U.S. troops in Afghanistan to about 6,000, including roughly 1,000 service members already in Kabul, plus an added force of 3,000 soldiers and Marines who were announced on Thursday. And the other story along with that is we saw the evacuation of the embassy in Kabul. Secretary of State Antony Blinken confirmed that embassy workers were destroying documents and other items ahead of the fleeing the embassy, but insisted it was being done in a very deliberate way and done in an orderly way. And the evacuation had military helicopters lifting off from embassy ground Sunday, sent puffs of black smoke into the skies over Kabul, and it kind of, a lot of people looked at it and it reminded them of the evacuation in Saigon during Vietnam. So just an awful situation there in Afghanistan, Ken.
Yeah, just unbelievable situation. But to give us some perspective, someone who served extensively in Afghanistan, who's been a regular guest of ours on the show, that is Lieutenant Colonel Sam Houston, class of '87 out of the U.S. Military Academy, the former garrison commander of the Bagram Air Base. Colonel Houston, how are you today?
I'm good, Ken. I thought for a second you were demoting me for some reason.
I apologize. Sam, tough. I mean, the words I can't quite come up with about how devastating this news is today, and what we're seeing on the screens happening in Afghanistan from the airport. What's your perspective?
Well, it's devastating from a standpoint of myself, and I know many other veterans who served in Afghanistan are completely heartbroken at what is unfolding right now in Afghanistan, where so many people have put so much national treasure, fortune, blood, sweat, and tears into making a better nation for the Afghan people. And what's unfolding is absolutely the worst international policy, foreign affairs policy decision since Vietnam, the conclusion of the Vietnam War. A month ago when I was on your show and we were discussing the decision to pull forces out of Afghanistan, I said that there had to be certain conditions that had to be met. And at the time I told you that I wasn't certain that they were there. I wasn't looking at the the intelligence summary for Afghanistan, but I had a pretty good feeling that the Afghan government was unable to provide the three things that we talked about a month ago, and that was the safety of the Afghan people, the security of the provinces of Afghanistan, and maintain the stability of their government. All three of those tiers were complete failures. And what's even more stunning is the velocity with which all three of those tiers crumbled right before our eyes. And what's unfolding in Afghanistan right now is there's nothing orderly about it. This is utter chaos. And there are a lot of people who have served alongside, a lot of Afghani people who have served alongside our forces, who've supported coalition attempts and efforts within the country, who are fleeing for their lives from the Taliban now, and they have nowhere to go. And there's American civilians and personnel who are trapped in the country, trying to find a way out, even tweeting, desperately trying to find a way to be removed from the country. And the sheer volume of the catastrophe, in my opinion, has completely overwhelmed the senior leadership of the United States government. It is embarrassing.
Well, it is. The situation has broken down so quickly. There had been anticipation of an orderly withdrawal of U.S. forces and embassy staff and contractors in an effort to bring out the translators and contractors from Afghanistan. How much of that is able to be accomplished at this point, especially in terms of like the translators, contractors, and who supported U.S. forces for so many years?
Well, I would not be able to give you a precise figure, but if you've seen the video of hundreds and even thousands of Afghanis running on the tarmac of the civilian side and even the military side of Kabul airport, people holding on to aircraft as they take off and falling to their deaths, you can only imagine how many of those people fell into the categories of interpreters, of Afghani contractors who were working alongside coalition forces and American forces, desperately trying to get out. And if that's the scene at Kabul, then you might as well forget about what the scene is for them trying to find any lifeline out of the country somewhere else. The Taliban have complete control. They own all the cards. We have absolutely nothing more than just a small tactical piece in Afghanistan remaining, and that is the contingent of forces at Kabul airport that are trying to get, and I say trying with emphasis, trying to get American people, American personnel, American civilians out of the country.
Yes, it's an amazing scene. You and I talked about a little bit about why the Afghan military broke down entirely, and also what happens to all the literally billions of dollars of equipment that the U.S. provided to them, including airplanes and helicopters. What do you see happening there with the Afghan military?
It just completely dissolved. And those who do not accept the terms of the new Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, as the Taliban have proclaimed, those tenets are as follows, and this is not me talking, this is the Taliban talking. The Taliban has already announced, if you want to be in Afghanistan, you want to be an Afghani citizen, you have to accept Sharia law, or leave, or be beheaded. So any former member, and I say former because there is no Afghan army anymore, any former member of the Afghan army who does not accept Sharia law or leave will be beheaded. So that's also the choices for the Afghani people. And every bit of that equipment is now in the hands of the Taliban. There is no negotiating that. Overnight, the Taliban became about the 36th largest army in the world because of the equipment that they all had just handed to them at every base, every outpost, every location where supposedly reliable Afghani forces were supposed to be defending. Instead, they fled.
What's the feeling, and we're talking with Colonel Sam Houston, graduate of the U.S. Military Academy, the former commander of the garrison commander of the Bagram Air Base. What's the feeling amongst military veterans, Army veterans, West Point graduates today watching this scene?
Heartbreak, disgust. We believe that we've been abandoned by who was supposed to be our nation's leadership. And that's another thing, is that the senior leaders of our country, and I'm talking with the President, the Vice President, the Secretary of Defense, they're void. They are absent. They are AWOL. And they own this disaster, 100%. They cannot point a finger at anybody else. They own it. And it has been a complete abandonment of the U.S. military policy on Afghanistan and what the Afghan government was telling them, as well as the intelligence community telling them needed to happen. So it's pure bewilderment and disgust for the vast majority of people like myself who sacrificed our time, our effort on deployments, believing in the mission that we were trying to fulfill in support of the Afghan people.
It's just amazing to watch this scene. There's been so much talk about the movement of the U.S. military to confront China in the Pacific and withdrawing from this region of the world. We just have a few seconds left. What do you think is the future of the region in Afghanistan and its neighbors?
It'll become a safe haven for Al-Qaeda, which will reconstitute in Afghanistan. The economic partners of the Taliban, of military assistance and economic partnership, will be our near-peer adversaries of China and Russia, so they will be able to establish strategic hold in the region again in support of terrorist activities. And remember, the overall objective is to bring down the United States and the Western world. And guess what? They just got some aces in the hole with what happened because of the Biden administration. And it's disgusting.
Colonel Sam Houston, Class of 87, U.S. Military Academy, veteran of Afghanistan, former garrison commander of the Bagram Air Base. Thank you. It's just so difficult that we've got this tough story today, Colonel.
Yes, it is. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on and speak today. And beat Navy.
Okay, we'll talk again soon. Thank you, Colonel.
Yes, indeed. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Sons of the American Legion Radio Report on WVOX AM 1460, or around the world on WVOX.com. We thank today's special guest, Dr. Rich Robitaille, and Colonel Sam Houston, West Point alum and former garrison commander at Bagram Air Base. Remember to check out our Facebook pages, Sons of the American Legion Radio Report, our Sea Services page, West Point Football Report, and Iona Basketball Report page. And until next week, remember to thank a veteran.